what's marvelous about this story is when you tell it to me now in a more plain way, I start to like think about it logically, and it really shows the distinction between like what actually happened if this was real versus like David Lynch's weird version of it.
We're cooking quinoa.
Quinoa is a short film from David Lynch, an eccentric, prolific, iconic filmmaker. Very goofy guy.
The goofiest, maybe.
You know, and it's fascinating when you see just his mannerisms and then some of like the darkness of some of the stuff he makes.
Yeah.
Because you almost wouldn't expect it to come from him. But anyways, Quinoa is a short film where David Lynch cooks some quinoa.
Yeah.
He walks you through his process. It's pretty entertaining, and also he sits down and kind of spins you a little tale, tells you a little story.
Right.
And it's interesting. It's very strange.
Fascinating.
I don't really know what the like message of it is, but I have a lot of fun watching it. Was this your first time watching Quinoa, Braden?
This is my first time watching quinoa all the way through. I think you sent me quinoa one night. I think I remember getting like a text message. You just sent it over to me, and I like watched it for a few minutes, and I was like, he's just cooking. Like I don't want to pay attention to this. And then I watched it this time, and I was entranced.
Yes.
You know?
He has a good way of like sucking you in to the story. And what's weird is like when I think back on it, I'm like, he never says that it's like not a real story. Like it sounds like he's telling it as a real story, but he starts describing like this weird part of this guy's like pouring coins in his hand.
Right, yeah. Originally I thought he was like describing like a script he was thinking about making into a movie or something. But then as he like tells it, he'll say things like, I remember, and stuff like that. That makes you like kind of question, is this a real event? Is this like just a dream he had? Was David Lynch in some alternate dimension that he frequents? What's going on?
Yeah. It's weird too because it was filmed in black and white, and it's honestly like, for a lot of it, he's like not even in focus. He's like sitting in the shadows, and you can kind of make out like his mouth and his eyes.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's like he's telling a ghost story.
Right.
And I realized, I mentioned it to you towards the end, I don't think I've ever seen a cooking video in black and white.
No, I mean David Lynch has his style.
Yeah, I mean he's made movies in color also. So I was trying to think, I'm like, all right, well, what's the symbolism there? Because I mean, I guess when you do a cooking video, part of the appeal of the color is like, oh, look at this nice colorful meal palette that we're going to be eating. And here it just looks like goop.
right.
And that's not saying anything against his cooking skills.
No.
But, yeah, I don't know.
I think
strange.
he'd be delighted to hear that you say it looks like goop.
Yeah.
I think David Lynch is one of those guys that likes the little nitty-gritty aspects. This is a man who likes electrical noises and shit like that when he makes movies. So I think he was trying to make things look a little grotesque and goofy and mucky.
So he's talking about like taking a train from Yugoslavia to Venice, Italy, and there's 2 stops on the train along the way, one in which he meets...
Very different stops.
Yeah, similar in some ways.
I guess so, yeah.
And the train went through a barren landscape, but you couldn't see anything. It was so dark. I mean, a moonless night.
And for the first stop, the train's broken down or something, and then he goes into this tent.
And there, through the dust, we saw a little stand.
This guy is selling sugar water, and like he has this weird exchange.
Moths were flipping and flying, and like frogs. Frog moths were pulling themselves out of the earth and flying up in front of the stand.
Where he gives him a coin, but the guy gives him the sugar water and like this weird looking piece of paper money. And the way he describes it is, I mean, I know he's obviously like a very good storyteller, but you really kind of start picturing in your mind, and you just tell him, at first he's like, the paper's blue and green and red and gold, and you start thinking about it, you're like, what does this money look like?
Yeah.
And then he gets back on the train, and he encounters his friend Jack, and Jack has found this girl who grew up in Yugoslavia, and she's never had a Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola wasn't sold in Yugoslavia. And I said, are you kidding me?
And he thinks that's no good. You got to have a Coca-Cola. It's part of this interesting part of life. So then he gets off the train, and he goes and he buys 6 Coca-Colas. And when he gives the guy the money, he keeps like spilling coins into his hand.
Mm-hmm. Somebody
He
has
can't
to do
catch
this.
it. Yeah,
He goes from this to
falling
this.
out of his hands.
And I'm looking down, and I'm thinking, what a miracle this is. And he's filling my hand with more coins and more coins, to the point where I had to join the first hand with the second hand.
And then when he looks up, the guy just stops. And so then he brings the woman the Coca-Cola. She drinks it.
And she took a huge drink, and it all shot out her nose.
What's marvelous about this story is when you tell it to me now in a more plain way, I start to like think about it logically, and it really shows the distinction between like what actually happened if this was real versus like David Lynch's weird version of it. Like you're describing the coins so plainly that I'm like, oh, he got change.
Yeah.
You know? but in the story, he describes it and he says it was a miracle.
Yeah.
He couldn't stop thinking about how it was a miracle that a man spilled so many coins into his hands. But in actuality, I'm probably just like, well, the exchange rate is just different there.
Yeah.
So
he may have gave him like $100 bill.
Yeah, exactly.
To break for.
He didn't know the money.
Coca-Colas.
So yeah.
No, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I was like, I didn't even think about change. I was just thinking, I'm like, why is this mysterious man giving him coins?
Right.
What do the coins mean?
Because that's the world that David Lynch lives in. That's what he was thinking. So he brings you in there.
And then as far as a lot of the cooking section, it's just funny watching him. He's in such a rush when he's doing it. He's like running back and forth to the sink.
We go quickly to the sink.
And like he's cleaning, and it's very loud.
Even when he's telling the story, he stops and he has to go like, how much time do we have?
What time is it?
Yeah, I have to know. Is it 7:52 yet?
At one point they say, at one point he asks the time and they say it's 7:50 and he says, tell me when it's 7:52.
Yeah.
As if like, why don't you just get up? It's
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right then.
No.
But he's a precise man, and that's what I picked up on. His precision was on point.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, me telling the story doesn't do it justice.
Not at all.
It's very, you just get sucked into it, and I think a lot of it's just the appeal of just him as a individual. He's just such an interesting guy to watch. And yeah, so speaking about quinoa, I don't know if you've really had quinoa before.
Never, actually.
Me neither. But David is actually known for eating like almost the exact same meal like every single
quinoa?
day. Not quinoa, but like
tomatoes, tuna fish, feta cheese, and olive oil.
Now, here's what's interesting about you. You eat that every day.
Every day.
Every day. You eat the same thing.
Yeah, it's very good.
And his point with that is that once you like set your like daily routine and like have it be like a pure environment, then you have like more freedom to be creative and like open into these new pumps. So I think that's part of the appeal of him showing us this too. Is it's just like, here's kind of part of his creative process in a weird way.
That's interesting.
Quinoa.
That's interesting you say that, because I was going to say that when we were talking about the black and white, and how the film itself is kind of like stripped down in a way. Like it's handheld cam. It's clearly just some film students who he just like got to press record and film this. And then the black and white, he stripped all of the color away from this. And when you do that, it lets all of his creativity shine through to the point where we can tell this and we could make this short film and you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't be, even though it's totally attainable for us to make this, you wouldn't get the same experience at all. You have to watch this to get the David Lynch quinoa experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really enjoy it. I don't know, are there any deeper messages you can extrapolate from it? There's also a very jarring moment where after he's done like telling the story, there's like some really spooky music in the background the whole time. And he just starts like flicking his hand at the camera. It just scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it, because I just don't know what it was. It was so unexpected in the noise, but all he's doing is he's just doing this.
It's also the lighting, because like his hand is lit, and then like when he puts his hand up, his head kind of becomes in shadow, so it's just his hand.
Yeah. Weird. I don't know.
Bizarre,
I don't know what the point of that was, but I enjoyed it. He mentions in his work about doing like dream logic, and I don't know. He's really in tune to that kind of stuff. And you can get that from here.
Right. I feel like I'm like turning a radio and I've tuned into some weird station I'm not supposed to be on or something.
Yeah. As far as our rating goes, I recommend this short film. It's about 20 minutes, so it's not super short.
Yeah.
But it's weird, and you just gotta. I mean, once you get through kind of the first part of him just like setting up the quinoa, and you get him sitting down, starting to tell the story. That's when you gotta get hooked more into it. So you gotta get through the slow burn. But I'm gonna give it 2 thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I enjoy this. It's weird. Check it out.
I'm gonna give it a thumbs up as well too. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I didn't think I would enjoy it because, like I said, like it's just cooking quinoa, but it's much more than that. And I think you'll go into this and you'll have something to talk about afterwards. If you're paying attention, you enjoy this kind of stuff. You enjoy Lynch.
It'll be a fun thing to show people who've never seen it also.
I got a question. I just thought of this while we were doing the ratings. So he mentions in the story that he mentions the name Jack and he mentions a train. Is this connected to the monkey movie, the short film?
I don't think so.
Okay. He has another short film
called What Did Jack Do?
Yeah, and he's also on a train in it. So I just didn't know if this was like, maybe if that's like another part to this. And it's also in black and white.
Yeah.
So it has like 3 little connections. I didn't know. Maybe he was just on a roll with train black and white short films.
Yeah.
But
perhaps we'll check it out and find out what Jack did, and has he had the quinoa? How does it connect to the quinoa?
Okay, all right.
All right, let's bid the short film review adieu.
Do.
Man, that is so good.